The champagne glass slipped from Rebecca's manicured fingers, crystal shattering against Italian marble as her eyes fixed on the patent certificate in my weathered hands. The silence stretched between us like a chasm, broken only by the distant hum of her brand-new Porsche's engine in the driveway, the same revolutionary hybrid system I'd designed in secret 5 years ago. "That's impossible," she whispered, her voice cracking for the first time since childhood. You're just the mechanic. I am her sister, the one she'd spent 20 years calling a failure. Before we begin, if you enjoy true and exciting stories like this one, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Write in the comments what city or country you are watching from. Now, let's get to the beginning of this story. The Hartwell estate had always been a monument to perfection, each room a calculated display of wealth and taste. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic rainbows across Persian rugs worth more than most people's houses, while original Monet paintings watched silently from walls that had never known a fingerprint. This was Rebecca's world, polished, prestigious, and perpetually cold. Even the air conditioning seemed to whisper judgments. I remembered visiting as a child, my oil-stained sneakers squeaking against the spotless floors, while Mother reminded me repeatedly not to touch anything. Rebecca would glide through these halls like she owned them, which, technically, she did after marrying Marcus Hartwell III, heir to the Hartwell automotive empire. Every dinner was a performance, every conversation a carefully choreographed dance around topics that mattered. "Still driving that embarrassment on wheels?" Rebecca had asked during last Christmas dinner, her laugh tinkling like expensive wind chimes. She gestured toward the window where my 1998 Honda Civic sat between two Maseratis like a wounded bird among peacocks. "Honestly, Elena, when are you going to grow up and get a real car?" The family had chuckled politely, the sound echoing off marble columns that seemed to amplify every humiliation. Marcus patted her hand approvingly, while Mother simply sighed, her disappointment as familiar as the scent of her Chanel perfume. They saw grease under my fingernails and assumed it meant failure. They heard about my tiny apartment above the garage and concluded I'd wasted my MIT engineering degree. What they didn't see were the blueprints hidden beneath my bed, the late nights spent perfecting designs that would revolutionize the automotive industry. What they didn't know was that failure had taught me patience, and patience had taught me precision. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning when Rebecca's tone shifted from condescending to confused. I'd come to fix her garbage disposal, another reminder of my appropriate place in the family hierarchy, when she mentioned something strange about her car. "The engine makes this peculiar sound," she said, not looking up from her organic fair trade coffee. "Marcus says it's supposed to be whisper quiet, but there's this humming, almost like it's singing to itself." My hands stilled on the wrench. That humming wasn't a flaw. It was a signature, an intentional harmonic frequency I'd built into the engine design to optimize fuel efficiency. It was my fingerprint on her perfect world, invisible, but unmistakable to anyone who knew what to listen for. "Maybe you should have it checked," I suggested quietly, watching her face for any sign of recognition. There was none. She saw me as the family disappointment, incapable of understanding the sophisticated machinery she drove daily. But I'd started noticing other things too. The way she unconsciously smiled when the engine started, as if responding to some subliminal pleasure. How she always chose to drive rather than be driven, claiming it relaxed her in ways she couldn't explain. The Porsche had become her favorite possession, and she had no idea why. The nights grew longer as my secret ate away at me like acid. I'd lie awake, listening to the city breathe outside my window, remembering the 3 years I'd spent in corporate anonymity, submitting designs under employee agreements that stripped away all credit. My hybrid engine system, the one that would make Rebecca's husband's company billions, had been filed under anonymous submissions before I quit in frustration. They'd stolen my life's work and packaged it in their golden world, while I remained invisible. Rebecca drove my dreams to charity luncheons and country club meetings, never suspecting that her despised little sister had created the machine that brought her such inexplicable joy. The weight of silence had its own gravity, pulling me deeper into resentment. Every family gathering became an exercise in biting my tongue while they praised Marcus's company for their innovative breakthrough. Every laugh at my expense felt like salt in wounds that refused to heal. I began working 16-hour days at the garage, losing myself in the rhythm of repair work, trying to forget that somewhere across town, My sister was bragging about a car that embodied everything I'd ever dreamed of creating. The explosion came without warning on a rain-soaked Thursday evening. Rebecca burst into my garage, her designer heels clicking against concrete like gunshots. Her perfectly composed facade had cracked, revealing something raw and desperate underneath. "They want to interview me," she said without preamble, rain dripping from her platinum hair. "Some automotive magazine wants to do a feature on Marcus's company, and they specifically want to talk to family members about the new engine technology." I set down my tools slowly, oil-stained hands suddenly steady. "What kind of interview?" "Technical questions," she laughed, but the sound was brittle now. "They want to know what makes the engine special, what innovations set it apart." Marcus thought it would be good PR to have his wife discuss the technology, but Elena, I don't understand any of it. The confession hung between us like a bridge neither had expected to cross. For the first time in decades, Rebecca looked vulnerable, stripped of the armor of superiority that had protected her since childhood. "I need your help," she whispered, the words clearly painful to voice. "You're good with cars. Could you teach me enough to fake my way through?" In that moment, I could have chosen kindness. I could have helped her maintain the illusion, could have ghost-written her responses and let her take credit for understanding my work. Instead, I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder I'd kept hidden for 5 years. "I don't think you need to fake anything," I said quietly, extending the patent documents toward her trembling hands. The moment she read my name on those papers, the world shifted on its axis. All the color drained from her face, as if someone had pulled a plug, letting 20 years of assumptions drain away. The sound that escaped her throat wasn't quite human. Part gasp, part sob, part recognition of a truth too large to process. "This can't be real," she whispered, fingers tracing my signature on official documents. "You're a mechanic. You fix broken things. You don't create them." But I could see understanding dawning in her eyes like a terrible sunrise. Every condescending comment, every dismissive laugh, every moment she'd made me feel small was being rewritten in the light of this revelation. Her favorite car, the source of her inexplicable joy, had been born from the mind of the sister she'd spent a lifetime underestimating. I called David that night, my former colleague from MIT, who'd left corporate engineering to become an investigative journalist. His voice was warm with surprise and something else, vindication. "I always wondered what happened to that brilliant girl from thermodynamics class," he said. "When I started looking into patent irregularities at Hartwell Automotive, your name kept appearing in early documents before mysteriously disappearing from final filings. The pieces fell together like a precision engine finding its rhythm." David had been investigating corporate theft in the automotive industry, following paper trails that led directly to Marcus's company. My case wasn't isolated. They'd been systematically stealing innovations from junior engineers for decades, burying the evidence under mountains of legal agreements and corporate restructuring. "They thought you'd stay quiet," David explained during our coffee shop meeting. "Young engineer, no family connections in the industry, grateful for any job. They never expected you to keep copies of your original work, but I had kept copies. Every blueprint, every calculation, every late-night breakthrough had been meticulously documented and safely stored. Years of humiliation had taught me the value of proof. Within days, David's network was mobilizing. Patent lawyers who specialized in intellectual property theft, journalists eager for a David and Goliath story, engineers who'd suffered similar violations and were ready to testify. What had felt like my private shame was actually part of a much larger pattern of systematic exploitation. The quiet precision of justice surprised me. No dramatic confrontations or explosive revelations, just the methodical application of truth to a foundation built on lies. Patent offices reviewing irregularities, investigators following money trails, journalists asking uncomfortable questions that Marcus's PR team couldn't deflect. I watched from my garage as the scandal unfolded across business magazines and industry websites. Hartwell Automotive stock began to tumble as more victims came forward, each with their own story of stolen innovations and buried credits. The engine that had made them millions became Exhibit A in a federal investigation. Rebecca didn't come to see me during those weeks of revelations. I heard through family channels that she'd hired her own lawyers, desperate to distance herself from Marcus's imploding empire. The Porsche disappeared from her driveway, replaced by a nondescript rental car that hummed with someone else's dreams. 3 months later, she appeared at my garage door again, but this time without the armor of designer clothes and perfect makeup. She wore jeans and sneakers, her hair pulled back simply, looking more like the sister I remembered from childhood than the stranger she'd become. "I left him," she said without preamble. "Moved out, filed for divorce, turned over all my financial records to the investigators." She paused, studying the concrete floor as if it held answers. "I bought back the Porsche at auction. I couldn't let someone else drive your work." We stood in silence for a moment, listening to rain tap against the garage roof like fingers on piano keys. Outside, I could see her car. My car, really, waiting in the dim afternoon light. "I don't expect forgiveness," she continued. "I just wanted you to know that I understand now. What I took from you wasn't just credit for an invention. I took your dreams and made them invisible." The apology felt too large and too small simultaneously, but there was something in her voice I hadn't heard since we were children. Genuine remorse mixed with something that might have been respect. "And you? What do you think? Did she do the right thing? What would you have done in her place?" 6 months passed before I saw Rebecca again, and when I did, she was kneeling in a community garden, soil under her fingernails for the first time in decades. She'd used her divorce settlement to start a foundation supporting underprivileged students in STEM fields, particularly young women whose innovations might otherwise be overlooked or stolen. "I can't give you back the years," she said, not looking up from the tomato plants she was carefully transplanting. "But I can make sure it doesn't happen to someone else." The foundation bore my name, the Elena Hartwell Fund for Innovation Protection, and had already helped 12 young engineers secure proper patents and legal representation. Rebecca had traded her mansion for a modest house with a garden, her Maseratis for a single hybrid car that she drove to schools and community centers, speaking to students about the importance of protecting their ideas. We had coffee sometimes now, real conversations about engineering and dreams, and the weight of mistakes that can't be undone. She still drove the Porsche, but differently somehow, with understanding rather than entitlement, appreciation rather than assumption. One evening, as we sat in my garage working on her car together, she smiled, tentatively, genuinely, and for the first time in 20 years, I smiled back. The engine hummed its secret song, and finally, we both knew who had taught it to sing. If this story touched you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us what you thought in the comments. Your support is what helps us continue bringing you exciting stories like this one. Now watch other stories on screen. We'll see you next time, with love and respect.